everybody. My name is Drew, and I am a psychotherapist here in New York City. And today we are going to talk about the subtypes of the seven. Now, I just did an overview of the sevens, and that's like the 101 course. It's maybe something that you go and watch first to just get ready, to get primed to go with this deeper dive into the very nuanced way you are a seven. Now, if you don't know much about the subtypes, I also do an overview on the subtypes, the centers of intelligence, that's the heart, head, and gut, and also stances. How do we move in the world? Like, you guys are assertive types. I'm a 4. I'm more of a withdrawn type. I explain those too. And it helps just give a background of what we're looking at here. Now, my goal is always to help you feel understood, known, and seen. So I hope I do that. I hope I hit on some things you didn't know you wanted to know. When we're talking about the subtypes of the sevens, it's pretty varied. Like most of the numbers, it makes you look like 3 different types of people. So if we look at the counter type particularly, we've got a person who goes against their passion. Now, your passion is gluttony. I don't want just 1, I want 10. I want to devour the world. I want to travel. I want to go out and just experience everything. I want to eat that piece of food. I don't want to just have 3 slices. I want 4 slices, and then I want a couple of slices of cake afterwards. Well, the social 7 works against that passion. We call them counterpassional, or the counter type. So they don't like to look self-interested. They'll sacrifice their desire for others and in relieving the pain of others. So they run from their own pain in a bit, but they will serve others and almost look like a 2. They often end up in healing professions. Then we have the sexual type. Now they're the most naive and gullible. Sorry guys, I'm a sexual 4, so I can relate a little bit. We like exalted moments. We like big, heavenly type of experiences. So they're like the heaven-bound type. They're the most optimistic of the optimistic group. But because they're so optimistic, they can be naive and suggestible. We have the self-preservers. They are the most practical. They're the most capable of networking and getting their pleasures met. They can struggle between desire and need. They are opportunistic. And we have to commend them for that. They can manipulate well. And that's their goal, though, is if they're getting healthy, it is to manipulate the world in a healthy, mutually beneficial way. So we'll go into all of that. When I found the subtypes, it helped me understand what kind of 4 I was. So I hope this helps you understand what kind of 7 you are. Again, my name is Drew. If you want to do personal work, individual work, whether that's long-term, short-term, or a one-time consultant, get in touch with me on my socials or on Drew at drewnewkirk.com, at my website, drewnewkirk.com. And hopefully this journey will be fun and I can fulfill my purpose, which is to help you understand things about yourself that you didn't know you wanted to know. So let's get into the cracks and crevices of the sevens and suss out as much as we can to explore your uniqueness. I usually like to start with the counter type. It's just a place that is nice to root us right away because a lot of people mistype. And often people are mistyping because they're a counter type. They don't really do things the way the other 2 do. Like one of these things is not like the other, one of these things just doesn't fit in. Well, in this case, you guys are working against your passion. One of the things we always have to do when we're talking about the Enneagram and the types is think about our unconscious motivation. And you guys use gluttony, excessive movements towards things to deal with your fear of pain, your worry about pain. So you're outrunning your pain by filling yourself up. When we're talking about counter types, they're usually working against the passion or the sin. They're going against it, not with it. So the other 2 are going with gluttony. They're taking in, they're getting their needs met. The social type tries to meet the needs of others. They work in opposition to the gluttony. So always follow where the passion is going and give it recognition and attention. So the social 7 looks a bit like a 2, like an Enneagram 2. They appear caregiving, they're giving things away, but they still deal with a lot of fear. That fear of pain is still there. So there still is the desire to take in all that stuff. They still want all the cake and candy. They still want all the good things in life. They still want the vacations. They still want all that stuff, but they are counter-passional. They're working against this. It's an either unconscious or a conscious move against that gluttony, so that they are not overly exploitive or overly manipulative. They reject a lot of their desire. They still want the things, but they reject their desire to have the things. They kind of stall gratification. It almost looks moral. It almost looks like an Enneagram 1, like a religious conviction, a good, pure curbing of my enthusiasm. Curbing the beast that wants to take in everything and devour everything and take that thing right in front of you because I want it more. There's a bit more of that guilt for the indulgences and awareness of its effects. So there is a curbing of self-interest, but that's still an advantage because you get to be seen as somebody who's sacrificial. So there's this role of the helper. Deal with others' pains, avoid my own. That's where the passion's still there, right? This still running from pain. There's still fear of pain. That's so loud that I will take care of others out there. Not go internal, I'll take care of them. They may be really strong practitioners, so you might see these types of folks, and it's great when they're healthy and they're aware of their brokenness in that way and their avoidances, as like priests and pastors and medical helpers, hospice care, because they do have that buoying spirit, that lighter spirit that can help people walk through some tough times. Also, unlike a 2, they're a bit more assertive. They're from that assertive camp of the 3s, 7s, and 8s, where 2s are in that category of dependent or compliant types, the 2s, the 6s, the 1s. Additionally, 7s are still future-oriented. 2s are more in the present. They stay in that present. The assertive types move to the future. The dependent and compliant types, those 1s, 2s, and 6s, they stay more in the present. You guys go a bit, social 7s go a bit more for, I wouldn't say approval as much as recognition that you have sacrificed. That's okay. It's a thing. We're all doing our best to be pure and properly motived. But you still have that idealism, that ingenuity, and you can be an active helper. That's where that assertive part comes out. It's really great. You go out and you help. There's a goodness there. There's an avoidance of indulgence, which is helpful in your cause. You guys, though, can be much more creative than 2 in this process. Much more intellectual as well, because you're a head type. So the 2s are more operating on that emotion. 7s are more operating with that intellect. Some things to watch out for, like all 7s, you can be manipulative with your enthusiasm. That enthusiasm gets attention. And so you can be really leaning towards being valuable with how much enthusiasm you're putting out into the world. So you're no different than the other 7s in that way, but it can really be cloaked in this other-centered mentality. Now, here's another thing too, and this is, in stress, you guys move towards the one. And the one can be judgmental, the one can be self-righteous. So you, as social sevens, have to watch out a bit because you are giving to others, because you are sacrificial. You can put yourselves in a moral superior role. You can put yourself in a place where people will kind of feel responsible to give back to you, and that sacrifice is a service. And so, there can be a victim mentality in that. And your partner or your friends or your family can feel this responsibility because you've been so sacrificial. And you might get off on that a bit. And that might be that one component. Like a one, they have that internal voice that motivates them. And you guys can also get off on that for, it's motivating them and it can be harsh to them, but you're kind of using it to get public recognition and attention and all that for your goodness. So your unexplored guilt, again, sevens don't want to deal with too much that negative feeling, where the ones are going to deal with a lot of guilt. You might not explore that too much, and it might be thrust onto others. You might project that out onto others. So that's a complicated internal kind of experience there. Your self-interest is still being served by getting attention for being so sacrificial and other-centeredness. But you might get off on the superiority that comes from that perfectionist vibe that I'm good, I'm doing this thing, and then resent others for getting their desires met, pursuing their desires, pursuing the things they want while you're shelving those desires. So you get a little bit uppity with that. But in a great way, that sacrifice, when it moves to service, is showing up for people, showing up for work and friendship and family and responsibility behind it, is supporting the broader movement of the world. So do it unapologetically, but watch your resentment for it. Now, there's rationalization that all of sevens do. You might rationalize and idealize the movement, the project, the pursuits you have that are for this human good. You may put on a pedestal, and with enthusiasm and idealism and your likability, manipulate people with this vision for this broader thing, this imagination that moves to future goodness. And as you're pursuing the ideal, and you're being that better person, right? Kind of getting off on it, you idealize yourself as well. And you put yourself in a position that is higher than it should be. And you're worried to get it right and to do the right thing. You now build this character up. And this is where that narcissism of the seven can get in. We talk about that in the overview. So tap into your 5 there and have some restraint and deprive yourself of getting off on that. All right, sexual sevens, it is your turn. I am a sexual 4, a one-on-one 4. So you one-on-one sevens, I relate a little bit. You guys live the most in grandiosity. If we're looking for those exalted moments, that's why we call it the sexual type, is looking for those like high intensity moments that almost are experienced like sex, like taking that drug. We, unfortunately, the sexual types, a number of us are lurching towards irreality, especially the sevens and the 4s. There is a irreality we're looking towards, that the better thing. It's always the better thing. The grass is always greener. And there's something quite young and naive about that. Especially with you sevens, to see things as so positive. So this is the unique thing about the sexual type compared to the other two, is that they're even more leaning on the positive. We'll see even other people's circumstances as positive and try to convince those people that it's positive, When the other person, especially like a 4, just wants to process it, you're pushing towards this scheme of glossing something over. You guys can be called the charmed charmer because you can charm, but you can be charmed. And you could be taken in. And there's a gullibility to that. So you have to reckon with your naivety and gullibility. How easily do you get taken in? You'll see a lot of sexual 7s become parts of cults because they can be swayed. There's an adaptability and airiness to them. So if you are susceptible to be called into this kind of like light, fluffy thing, or at least something that seems light and fluffy, it is a pull towards that idealistic, that ethereal, that enthusiasm. And we call the sexual 7 heaven bound. They are in the skies. Now I say about the 4s, we can go down into the depths of hell and look in there and see what's going on. Now we can jump up into the heaven and see what's going on there and bring it back to people. But you guys tend to get stuck in heaven. This is that idea that, the people who are easily able to like see the squirrel and like chase the squirrel, the diversionary products that come in front of you and make life seem really exciting for a moment, but that could be debilitating. If there's only a few tapes playing inside of you and you don't diversify and broaden the tapes that play inside of you, you're going to whitewash everything. The power of positivity can get in your way and restrict you. If everything is good, then you will not see the stuff that will actually help you become great. Yes, possibilities are exciting. You don't want to miss out. I get it. Satisfy those needs. But when you're overly optimistic, you are naive. Too squishy and mushy and excessively positive. And unconsciously avoiding the emotions that are required to be integrated so that you can be whole and truly have freedom. But when you're running out and beyond these, you will miss them. You'll miss those moments to hone in on those emotions and learn them. Now you're like the other 7s, you idealize, you're optimistic, but you guys are like optimists and idealists on crack. It's extreme. What could be is constantly in your head. And so there is an escape hatch to real life for the sexual 7 that you have to watch out for more than the other 2 even. The avoidance of pain is a more concentrated effort on your part than the other 2 types. And there is where you can get really stuck. Your overcompensation is a liability. It's just a liability. And so to become mature, you have to get closer to that pain. We talked about that in the overview. We have a whole section there on just how to respect and appreciate pain more, because it will make you more full. That the charmed life that you're pursuing isn't as full as it could be. It's a fantasy. Yes, there is wonder to life. But if you're constantly in love with life and loving love and idealizing things, making it romantic, well, you're going to get tripped up even more so, and the pain will be tripled. I say tripled, I just made that up, but you get it. We also talk about the sexual 7s as being suggestible or prone to suggestibility, to be taken in, to be suggested to, and therefore susceptible to being swayed and moved easily. We also want to consider sex here. Let's just talk about sex for a second. Sevens in general, but I'd say like sexual sevens are pretty normal sexually. You just aggrandize the relationship. You make the relationship big, and sometimes that could cause you to have to shift and maybe be a little less commitment oriented than the other two, because there is so much juice that gets out of the idea of love. So that you might become a person who loves them and leaves them. And the idea of romance is bigger than the actual romance. There's an idealization of the union over even intercourse. So, it is not true that every sexual type is good at or wants to have sex all the time. So this is a unique case here, is that you might not even be as oriented towards the act of intercourse as the other two. I'm not trying to like rank them, but it is the idea of a perfect union. So don't get it twisted where it's just because I'm a sexual 7 and I'm gluttonous that I'm going to want to have sex all the time. It might be more so that you're looking for that relationship to be powerful and dynamic and satiate you. Therefore, the sexual 7 could fall in love easily and must beware to not be taken or to not take others, to not constantly be in this whirlwind of excitement. You must be complimented, though, for your ability to improvise and your ability to imagine. So these are real qualities of this sexual 7. That improvisational ability to just tweak and learn and shift, and can still be planners, which is good, to put those together. But also, as we've talked about, you can shift towards pleasure very easily too and get intoxicated towards the excited. There's this kind of like a dance of excited and anxious swimming together that goes on for the sexual 7. That mania is actually like an anxious act of not wanting to stay in the moment. But some of it's good, right? Because it's being excited about life. So watch out for those levels of excitement and anxiety. We say fear when we're talking about that fear triad, right? But a lot of that is really anxiousness. It's worried about what could happen. So with pain, it's I could get stuck in this terminally. And that will lead towards restlessness, which leads towards a lack of reality. We have to move past the reality. And then there's like a reality confusion. So I want you to be aware of what real life requires. It requires extended time in the present. The ordinary. Now, the sexual 7 is the most likely to say, the ordinary is not for me. I don't want boring people in my life. I don't want boring things in my life. I'm excessively moving towards other dimensions. We almost think of them as extraterrestrial. Like they're into space often, and sci-fi. That other world, other spiritual realms. If you are excessively moving towards other dimensions, to the neglect of reality, well, you're wasting so much opportunity. So cool, dreamers, embellishers, heaven-bound. There's something really beautiful about that. And when it's matured, you help others dream, others build great narratives and tell great stories, unique stories, and move to the heavens. But when you are unhealthy, you are fleeing regularity, freeing your earthly ground, and it's pathological. And the path is so far in the future that you are missing all of this beauty here. So, moving to the mundane, moving to schedules and regularity and some kind of consistency in the now is really helpful for you sexual 7s. I know it sounds disgusting as we're talking about it. You might want to puke a little in your own mouth. just breathe. Try to just be aware in this moment of how much, even as we're talking together, that you might be trying to shift to the future. So 7s, we love you. Sexual 7s, we really love you. You're so fun. You've got a lot to offer. But mature that, develop that, so that you are not stuck in a place that isn't real. It's fantasy. Come back with us. Okay? We are at the most gluttonous of the gluttons. You self-preservers, no offense. I love you. I actually relate to this one a lot because you guys are great opportunists. We'll get into that soon. You guys have kind of a return to the womb mentality, I've heard it said. Sucking at the teat. You want all of your needs met, and you will indulge and hopefully have a utopian experience of getting all the things you want. That's kind of the womb experience. It's just like, there's nothing to worry about here. I'm going to get these needs met, and I don't have to do much to do it. Now, this might lead you towards sex, drugs, rock and roll, and food, and escaping hardships while just devouring the world. But you also have this gluttony towards networking, relating to people. I relate in this way where any bar, restaurant, anywhere that I go where there's a group of people working, I'll be writing down the names of all those people. So when I come back, I can say, hey, so-and-so and so-and-so. Now, I'm a little bit more withdrawn in that way as a 4. I'll wait to see if I want, I'll get their names, but I'll wait to see if I really want to interact. Whereas 7 will just go play around and see who can serve me, who can serve my needs here. And so they are those great opportunists. And I love the idea of opportunity. I like actually even saying I'm an opportunist because it can ruffle some people's feathers. They see it as a negative thing. And when we're talking about the self-preserving 7, there is an opportunity that they see in people to get them to the next place. Now, sure, this can be highly manipulative. It can be opportunist in a way that's pretty ugly. But this is why we say they're the keepers of the castle. They collect humans. Almost like a chessboard. I have my queens and my kings and my rooks and my pawns. And they kind of want to move those around and have this trusted group, but also know how to put the pieces because it gives me security. If I choose this family, I have some group security. And they can help me solve problems practically. This is why they could be very committed. And survival is crucial. So I have to commit to this group and follow through so I can keep my bonds. So that intention on acquiring people so I can have these connections that can help me move my career and social life, that social navigation can come off poorly if it isn't done well and it doesn't have enough of the right motives. It looks too selfish. It looks too greedy or gluttonous. The opportunism becomes darkened and muddied. But y'all are good at sniffing out opportunity everywhere, like a hound dog. Like a social hound dog. You are going to find the deal. Now, literally, this could take place in sevens, self-preserving 7s can really be good at dealing, like getting a deal. But it's also a negotiation they're sometimes not even verbally making with people. That there's a deal, there's a mutually beneficial thing that's going to happen here. Now, I said I relate. This is one of the reasons I write down names. I like to walk into a restaurant or a bar and be known. I like to get a free drink because it's more about the appreciation and the connection than it is about the money. So even sometimes when I get a free drink, it's kind of like this stamp of approval. And there's some security in it. I feel safe there. And we are constantly doing that as people, but I think 7s are at, self-preserving 7s are at kind of like the tip of the spear of creating the family, and making sure, as an assertive type, that they have a role there that's important. So yeah, you guys are good networks, you're good manipulators, you're calculating. Now, when I say you're good manipulators, there's good manipulation, there's bad manipulation. Now, I'm using that blanket like you're good manipulators, you're good at it. But what we have to do is concentrate on how to be good manipulators. Come from a good place that's mutually beneficial, a place that is serving a bigger cause rather than just serving our needs. But in all of our lives, we're utilizing people for survival. When a 7 and a self-preserving 7 is doing it well, they are engaged, they're connected, they're present with the group and those people, and therefore utilize those relationships for the benefit of the whole group. Yes, they get something out of it, but hopefully the others will too. Like I was saying, there is a shrewd, pragmatic, cunning component. It's pretty strategic, and it's not gullible like the sexual 7. It's much more honed. Naranjo, one of the creators of the Enneagram, says that there's 3 components to the self-preserving 7. Strategy, rebellion, a push against things, and isolation. Even though they're gregarious, they can isolate themselves a bit. Present but mentally off because of the strategy that's going on. They're in the future a bit, so not as connected, and there's an isolation there. You know, they can get people to depend on them a bit, and that can isolate them as well, especially when they're playing a role that is crucial. It can put them into a place in which they can't stay as connected. And of course, that self-interest, that is connected to the strategy, especially when they're creating alliances, they must become conscious to that. Because if they're not, it's too transactional. And you can look a little bit like a 2 there again. That there's that transaction. I've done this for you, so you must do this for me. I give to get. If they're not overly aware of it, it becomes a very dark side and a corruptible side of their self. They become prone to corruption because they're looking for their desires to be met more than their needs to be met. We all have needs, and they're healthy. But we also have desires, and the desires can get in the way of the needs. So that gourmand, the title, right? The gourmand, the person who wants to devour, also likes to bring people together for that family kind of orientation with their friendliness and their fun and their talkativeness. That consumer, that hedonist can get in the way. Too bent on pleasure and experience and the loving of devouring. They can compromise themselves and others. So again, watch out for what's just a desire and what's a need here. What's self-interested towards my security, and what's mutually beneficial to us all. Now in sex, they can be more sexually expressive than the sexual type. The sexual type lives more in fantasy. The self-preserver is more practical, wants to get those desires met. So they might be much more sexually active and practically practicing the art of sex, because it's less about fantasy, it's more about at some level security. So let's stick with hot button topics, dealing with sex there. Let's also deal with religion. I've found this to be true of my 7s in my life that are self-preserving, that there is a real strong resistance to any organized religion. And they often can be atheists, that they put much more concentration on science. Now, I, of course, I don't know if this is of course, but I don't believe that the sacred and the scientific are 2 separate worlds. I think that they work together, and I think that they're harmonically connected. But I have found that a lot of sevens don't, and that there is this something pitted against each other there. Now, I understand that with religion, it's distorted and manipulated in so many ways, and there's so many types of folks out there that believe things that don't incorporate science in a certain way or twist science. And a seven tends to be pretty book smart. They're usually well read. And while they're light-hearted, they can be ruthless. So I don't mean ruthless bad, they're going to dissect things. And they can be those rule breakers, that the rules don't apply to them, that there's a freedom that they want. And anything too organized is constricting. It feels safer and unhindered and untamable to like be kind of the freedom they want. So I've seen like that resistance to religion, or even spirituality for that matter. That suspicion that's there can be very six-ish. It's kind of almost a little bit of a paranoia. Hints of that fear come out. That if I get too close to this thing, it might smother me. That dread will hit, you know. And like all self-preservers, there's still that concentration on having the right resources. And one of the resources for a self-preserving seven is freedom. That's a resource they want, to not be hindered. So that practical part of the self-preserving seven says, what's empirical? And if it's not empirical, I'll rebel against it. Yes, I'll be friendly, but I'll be resistant and suspicious. So it kind of can make for some fun conversations with sevens. I've had a lot of great conversations about spirituality and religion with my sevens friends. Sevens friends? You get it. But like all self-preservers, just watch for where you are most concentrated on your security. You know, things like saving, investing, storehouses of food, storehouses of money. I've seen a lot of sevens that really storehouse their money. You'd think that they'd be much more free with it. Now there's those types of sevens too, and it's probably more on that sexual side where it's impractical. The self-preserver is going to be very practical with their resources. So if you are a self-preserving seven, you might actually even need to get a little bit more comfortable with loosening some of your grip on things. Think about how you can build solutions in a different way and how you can tap into what are actual anxieties and fears. Remember, you're in that fear triad, but you don't often call fear. You call it moving to the next thing. There's something out there. It's a moving away and towards something. But the thing you're moving away from is often that anxiety and fear. So just be careful with that, guys. All right, sevens, that's it. It's the end of our journey. Thank you for joining me along the way. If you are new to my content, please subscribe. I'm going to keep on pumping stuff out and hopefully get even more creative down the road. And if you are interested in individual work, get in touch with me. Thanks for joining me on this journey, and I will see you soon. As I always say at the end of any one of these that I do, everything is yet to be done. Everything, in the words of Rainer Marie Rilke. All right, guys, have a great one.